Welcome to the Made in the Mist podcast, the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. Now please welcome your hosts, Emma and Dan.
Welcome everybody to another amazing episode of the Made in the Mist podcast, the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs, where we interview the top entrepreneurs here from the Niagara Falls and the region and learn about their tips and their tricks, what makes them tick, and their secret sauce to success. So today we have another amazing entrepreneur, influencer, and everything in between. Vanessa De Prophetis, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we're really excited because you're kind of the first person that we had that started as an entrepreneur and then transitioned to an influencer. So we're really excited to learn a little bit about your backstory and what got you into the entrepreneurship world, and then what made you switch over into the influencer world. So whenever you're ready, just a quick background of who you are, what you did, and what you do.
Well, I grew up with entrepreneurs. So my grandparents, my parents, everybody's an entrepreneur.
Grandparents, what did your grandparents do?
My grandparents have Rock Legends Wax Museum and Rock World.
Okay.
So my grandfather actually made all of those wax figures by hand.
Oh, come on.
Yep.
Wow.
And he did it for his children so that they can open up a store and make a living, basically. So he kind of, I guess, started it all.
And that was one of the first ones here in Niagara Falls, one of the wax museums.
I think so. I don't think I was necessarily around back then, or I was a baby, so I'm not entirely sure. But yes, I remember he has a whole story of when he bought that store and how he didn't think that they would make it. And then obviously they did really well, and his kids were able to make a living and raise their families off this business, right?
Wow, it's amazing.
So at the age of, I would say 9, 10, I already started working for my parents. So I already learned, a lot of people ask me all the time, how do you get your work ethic? And I would say, well, I've been working, child labor. But
it was instilled into you.
It definitely was. And they are definitely the biggest reason for my success. But I learned way back then, my dad wanted me to get jobs working for other people so that I wasn't necessarily just working for them, so I could learn what it's like to work for others. And that's when I realized I don't want to work for anybody.
Oh,
there you go.
Yeah. Because basically working for my parents, it was like working for myself, right? I made my own rules. So I thought, okay, I cannot live the rest of my life under somebody else's rules. I need to do this myself. So I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. So after high school, I went to school to be a hairdresser, and I thought eventually I'd have my own hair salon. My cousins have their own hair salon, so I thought, maybe that's what I'll do. And I really enjoyed doing hair. I was doing hair when I was a little kid. I would always do everybody's hair for them. But I realized when I was in the program that I didn't necessarily like working with people all day long.
There you go. And that's when you transitioned to?
Animals. Yeah. But I didn't know that I was going to do that. I mean, I always loved animals since I was a little girl. They were everything to me. It's the only thing I ever really wanted to do. I would make friends with people in elementary school that had pets so that I could just go hang out with their pets.
And not hang out with the pig? Yeah, thanks. We're gonna hang out with the pets.
Honestly, I'd be like, oh, you have kittens coming over, right?
That's awesome.
So I didn't know that that's what I was going to do, but it was basically a passion and a career that just kind of merged. I just went to a local grooming salon and basically begged the lady for a job, and she taught me how to groom, and that's where it all started.
Wow. And I mean, such a competitive space, the dog groom business, because now you got big box stores like, PetSmart and stuff like that also do the grooming too. So how'd you find that little niche of, people that, wanted to get their pets groomed, and that there was enough business so that you can compete within that market?
So I thought that it was a competition, but it really wasn't a competition. People are having pets. They're getting pets more often than they're having children now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And people that have a dog usually have more than one dog.
Now they do, yes.
So there's actually way too many pets and not enough pet groomers. I didn't know that when I went into it, but it was very quick. My business just skyrocketed within a year. I was already working full time. By year 2, I needed an employee. So it actually wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. The job itself is hard, but in regards to competition, I didn't find that. What I did find, and you mentioned big box stores, the difference between me and them was that you drop your dog off at, let's say, PetSmart at 8, 9 o'clock. You don't pick up your dog till, let's say, 1 or 2 o'clock. People didn't like that.
No.
They don't like leaving their pets for that long. They don't like their dog sitting in a crate for that long.
Absolutely.
So I just did an express service. So your appointment's at 9, your dog is done by 10, you can pick him up.
Perfect.
So people liked that.
That's what they wanted. Yeah.
That's what they wanted. No crating or anything like that. And it's a more personal experience because when you go to PetSmart, there's multiple groomers there. You never know what groomer you're going to get when you bring your dog, right? So I learned everything about somebody's pet, what they liked, what they didn't like, the best way to get them groomed, how the owner liked them being groomed. So the grooms were always exactly the same every time somebody would bring in their dog, which they liked.
The consistency.
Yeah, consistency and just the fact that, okay, Peanut doesn't like having her nails clipped, so I'm going to leave that to the very end. And this is the best way I found to do it so that she doesn't get anxious. People liked that.
Absolutely.
I'm learning more about their pets.
Well, that's the thing too. Even when you look at yourself when you go to a salon or a barber, you choose the one that's most consistent with what you like, right? So I find that you found that little niche where people want consistency with their dog or their pet's grooming, and you were able to use that to your advantage. So kudos to you. And a little side story, Vanessa has an older sister that I went to grade school and high school with, and with both of our obsession for the Dallas Cowboys. And we'll leave those comments aside for now. But that's where you kind of started with your love for pets when you had those dogs. I don't know if you want to go a little history of how you started your love for pets. Were you able to groom them at a young age?
So when I was born into a family with a dog. So my parents had a Rottweiler named Sanja that they got when they were kids, basically. Then they got married, they had kids. So Sanja was a bit older. There's lots of photos of me with as a baby with this giant Rottweiler, right? And a lot of people, I just remember a lot of my friends coming over when I was young and everybody was kind of scared of dogs and I didn't really understand. I was scared of dogs. I don't get it because I grew up with these massive dogs. But yeah, that's where it all started, definitely with the dogs.
So you grew up around dogs. You were always comfortable around them. You always kind of had a passion for them, your dogs. So, and then with you going to hairdresser school and you found your passion wasn't people, you were trained for a year. Was it just a year of training or?
It was about 1 year of hairdressing school, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then you pivoted pretty quickly while you were in school right into dog grooming?
I actually dropped out of hairdressing school.
You did, okay.
Yeah, I hated it.
Yeah.
And I get so much anxiety and stress about even having to go. And I wasn't like that with school, but something to do with doing people's hair. Like if you mess up somebody's hair, they get pretty upset.
Okay.
So it was stressful.
So how did you know the difference of instead of powering through it? Because some people would say, no, I just have to stick to it. I've made a commitment. I need to keep going. What was it? Just do you trust yourself so much? You had that gut feeling of this is not for me. I don't feel good doing it. I'm going to change my mind and go to something else.
I definitely knew that it wasn't for me, but I did have the intent to go back and finish. What happened was I just got a summer job at a pet grooming salon, and then my life kind of changed from there because I realized it was way more fun. I enjoyed it. I had a passion for it. So once I realized that, I thought, well, I'm not wasting my time going back. I'm starting my own business.
Yeah. And you found out very quickly that there was a high demand for personalized pet care.
Yes.
So it all worked out. And so you grew so quickly in 2 years. You said, how long have you had your business operating?
My business was operating for 11 years. I don't have it operating anymore. We'll get more into that after. But 11 years I was grooming for. And yeah, it happened pretty quickly, but I would say that my business didn't really take off until I made a Facebook page.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because back then, even though everybody was using Facebook, it wasn't being used as much for business. It was just starting to be something where you would advertise your business. So yeah, that's when it took off.
So what is the name of your grooming business?
My grooming business was Perfect Pooch's Dog Grooming.
Okay.
But now everything is Girl with the Dogs.
Okay. Yeah. So do you have that trademarked and everything?
Yes.
Because I figured, so that's your handle on everything is Girl with the Dogs.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Excellent. So when you open that Facebook page, what year is this, around 2010 or later?
I'm going to say 2012. Maybe I started the Facebook page. I don't know for sure, but I think it was around 2012.
Okay. And so you just started with a Facebook page. And what prompted you to do that? Just the popularity? You kind of saw that?
I needed to advertise, right? So I opened my pet grooming business, and my ways of advertising was I was, driving around the city. I would go to pet stores, dog parks, veterinary offices, and I would just put my flyers in people's windshields. And
Just
then,
hustle.
Yeah, it was just, exactly. Walking.
It's the name of the game.
It's the only way, right?
Yep,
you have
absolutely.
to get your name out there. I would walk up and down my neighborhood with my dog and just put my flyers in people's mailboxes. I would mail out flyers randomly just from using, like the phone book and getting addresses,
phone book.
right?
Smart,
the phone
though.
book.
I wonder if some of our listeners know what a phone book is. But a big document had everybody's phone number and address.
Maybe when we'll flash a photo of it. Now we know. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you did hustle. You did a lot of like that, like cold calling the flyers, but you were still getting business from that, but it wasn't reaching enough lead generation for your comfort.
Yes. So that's when I had social media and then I didn't. And then I got social media back for the business in particular. Mm-hmm. And I just decided, okay, I'm going to make a Facebook page with my business because I didn't want to make a website. No. I didn't want to hire someone. I didn't want to have to pay for a website.
It's expensive, yeah.
Yeah, and at that time, I wasn't really making any money, right?
Absolutely.
So I thought the easiest, cheapest way would be to do a Facebook page. So I started doing that, and then all of my clients started following me, and they started making reviews or, posting pictures of their dogs, and then that would get shared and everything else. And
just organic growth from that point on.
Yes.
Awesome.
Very good.
So I just wanted to go back, how long were you working in the actual dog grooming business under somebody?
I was working for somebody for about 2 years, but about a year into me working for her, I opened my business. So I was running my business and working for her for about a year as well.
And when did you know? Because a lot of our listeners there want to know when is that right time to make that leap. And sometimes people say there's never that right time. But how did you know that you felt comfortable saying, listen, I'm going to take this opportunity and I'm going to put all my eggs in one basket and hope for the best? So when did that moment come? And that's the first part of the question. The second part is, how did you let your employer know that you were going to be opening a business that could be rivaling their business?
That's an interesting story. So it's true that you don't really know. And when I took that leap, I made a lot of mistakes. So looking back, I don't think I was actually ready to start my own business. So it really is just a leap of faith. Mm-hmm. But I was able to fully groom dogs start to finish without her assistance or without her having to fix anything. So that's when I noticed, okay, I can do this at home by myself without somebody else's help, right? And I actually what really happened is she wanted me to buy her business. She offered me to buy her business. She was 65 years old at the time and she was going to retire. Mm-hmm. So I was looking into it, and you remember me saying my grandfather basically started entrepreneurism in my family, right? So I talked to him about it, and he said, well, I want to see her books. I want to see obviously how much she's making compared to like what she's charging you. And he knows all that. He's really good with numbers and everything. So he looked at it all and he said to me, I don't think you can make it in this business. Looking at these books, I don't think that you'll make any money. I don't think this is the right career for you. Wow. And I was devastated. I remember crying in my bedroom thinking, what am I going to do with my life if I'm not doing this? This is what I want to do. So I decided I was going to prove him wrong. I'm like, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. But he said to me, I don't think you should buy her business. You're 19 years old. You can start your own business. You can make your own name. You can make your own reputation. You can start out of your mother's house. You don't have to rent somewhere. You don't have to buy something. Why buy somebody's business when you're unsure whether or not those clients will stay?
That's true.
Now you have to pay rent. You have to pay utilities. Why put yourself in debt to start when you don't have to?
That's a good point.
So I said, okay. So my mom said, okay, you can use the basement to start grooming dogs. I already had it set up for hairdressing.
Okay.
So I didn't have a bathtub for dogs or like a shower or anything like that. So I had to make do with my human shower. So that's what I started doing. And I didn't tell my boss to start. I thought, I'm not going to tell her because she's probably not going to be too thrilled about it, right? No,
exactly.
So I was only grooming a few dogs a week. And one day she actually came to my house to drop something off for me, and she saw my sign in the front yard that I was grooming, and she was not thrilled.
No, of course. How would she?
No, she wasn't happy, but at the same time, she was retiring, right? So I wasn't actually going to be her competition because she was no longer going to be doing it.
Of course.
So long story short, she found out, things got awkward, decided to quit. Okay. And that's how that happened.
Yes. So kind of thrown into the fire at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So would you say was that your first challenge, was managing your reputation were you worried she was like, there was no bad blood, was there? Maybe a little?
She wasn't thrilled.
Okay.
She wasn't
so
thrilled.
What would you say, was that one of your first challenges besides, deciding if you were going to buy or not? When you said you faced a lot of challenges, and
that was more just learning to grow up, stand up for myself, and think, like I have to do what's best for me, not what's best for you. Sorry. Correct. No offense.
Well, it's and I'm going to use a terrible pun here, but it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, right?
Right.
So, that's what happens is that, if you're staying stagnant, you're not looking to improve or find ways, like you said, for the express cut, then, you're not going to grow your business. And that's where you kind of had that moment to say, listen, I could do what you do. Yeah. But I can also add some other features in to be better than you or be better than the rest of the competition. And then that's where you had kind of your explosion. And just for context, you only work with dogs. You don't do any other pet grooming.
Dogs and cats.
Oh, and cats too. Yeah. How's that? How's the cat grooming?
Cat grooming is actually easier than dog grooming, because they don't really move. They can seriously injure you.
Well, yeah. Do you have to wear like the big leather gloves for?
I don't.
Okay.
I have scars up and down my arms. Yeah. But I think cats are, in general, easier. Dogs they move around a lot. It's more physical, right?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so now going back, so you basically said I have to quit. I have to start my own business.
Yeah.
And then was there a moment there where you're like, I'm unsure if I made the right decision in quitting. How am I going to increase my business? And then how did you, from that point on, you were handing out flyers, doing a little bit of online marketing, but how did you grow your business big enough so you can support yourself?
So it wasn't a hard decision for me to leave because I was only being paid minimum wage, and everybody else, all these other groomers, were getting 50% of every pet that they groomed. So I realized that I was being paid significantly less than what a groomer should be getting paid, especially for how difficult the job is. It's not just hard mentally, it's not just hard physically, but I have scars all over my body from working with these animals. There's lots of groomers that have carpal tunnel. They've had surgery, shoulder injuries. Sure. So minimum wage is just not going to cut it.
Absolutely.
So it was easy for me to leave that behind and start working for myself because I could groom 2 or 3 dogs in a day and make more than what I was making working for her for 8 hours. So it was an easy decision. Yeah. In regards to building my business, I was living at home with my mom. And so she was taking care of, housing. I didn't have to pay rent.
I was going to say, what were your startup costs roughly? Did you have to buy any equipment or anything?
I had to get a tub.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had to buy a bathtub, scissors, clippers. I could say that anyone could start a pet grooming business for around $500.
Wow.
That's a good budget.
If you want to do it cheap,
$500.
Absolutely. Obviously, you're going to invest in better equipment as you go.
But just to start.
So it's a cheap startup cost. And I didn't have to pay anything to run it where I was running it.
Good.
So even if I was only grooming a few dogs per week, it didn't matter because I didn't need to be making that much money at that time.
Yeah.
Well, and you have repeat customers too, right? And what's the life cycle of a pet groom? Is it once every 3 months or 6 months, once a year? How often are some of these clients returning to you? Is it dependent, I guess, on the dog, how short they want the hair, right?
It's dependent on the dog, dependent on the owner. Do you have a good owner that's going to bring them regularly, or do you have a neglectful owner that's only going to bring them once or twice a year? I would say the average is about 6 to 8 weeks they come.
Oh, wow. That frequent. Yeah. So for some of us that are dog owners and don't know if we are good or bad dog owners, how often should we be bringing our pet to get groomed?
So not every dog needs to be groomed.
Okay.
Right? So I'm more talking about dogs that have hair that continuously grows and has to be cut, just like us, right? But it grows a lot faster. So those dogs need to be on a schedule. Dogs that shed, for example, you don't ever have to bring them to the groomer. It just depends. We didn't bring our Rottweilers to the groomer growing up. We just bathed them, clipped their nails.
Yeah, that's the same thing. We bathe and we just, the spots around, where they need to be cut because they do shed a lot. So, so the more the dog sheds, the less they have to get groomed.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's just dependent on the owner. So I have a German Shepherd. I like to get her groomed once a month because the more I groom her, the less she sheds, the less hair in my house. Yep. So that's just really dependent on what the person wants that owns the dog, right? Okay. Yeah. So, I would say about 6 to 8 weeks because the majority of the dogs that we see are dogs that get haircuts.
Yeah.
Okay, absolutely. So you had to build that clientele, right?
Yes.
To get those repeat customers coming every 6 to 8 weeks. So, for you to transition into working yourself, how many dogs or pets did you have on your registry there so that you knew that you had a recurring revenue and you knew that you had enough clientele to support yourself?
I get a lot of people ask me that question, how many clients do you have? I really personally could not answer that because there's so many. I've never actually sat there and counted them all. But I would groom myself when I worked for myself, by myself. I would groom 8 to 10 dogs a day.
Okay.
When I hired someone, we would groom anywhere from 15 to, let's say, 17 dogs a day together, right?
And what's the average groom time, like a half hour?
For a small, let's say a small Bichon Frise or Shih Tzu, it would take 1 hour.
Okay, wow.
Start to finish. Yep. For a large dog, it can take an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Wow.
So I learned working on my own how to be efficient and book as many dogs as I can without sacrificing on quality. When I added somebody, I was just a matter of teaching them how to also do that.
Other than the online marketing and the handing out of flyers, so how did you get your business so that you were able to sustain the business and grow?
So it was more just word of mouth.
Okay.
Once I was booked about 3 weeks in advance all the time, it was pretty sustainable. I knew that clients were going to be back within a certain amount of time. I had a few slow months here and there. Every year you have 2 slow months because everybody wants their dog groomed before Christmas.
Of course.
So there's a major rush. And then January, you're kind of slow. And then, when students go back to school, parents are more focused on their kids in September. So that's kind of slow.
Yes.
And then everything just picks up again after that.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it was pretty quick. I would say it was about 2 years before I was working full time, had an employee, was doing well.
And then is that when you kind of transitioned out of the house? Did you ever have a bricks and mortar location, or was it a from home business?
Did you outgrow this space?
So I worked in like a cubicle size, smaller than this room, in my mom's garage for about 5 years.
Wow.
Then my ex and I bought a house and my business moved there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we broke up, so I had to buy another house and move my business there. So it's moved from 3 different houses. I've never had a commercial business. It's always been in my home.
Absolutely. It makes it easier, right?
Yes.
I guess you don't need a commercial business for this line of work, right?
I would tell anybody that wanted to run a pet grooming business, if you can run it at home, if you're allowed to, because obviously it depends on bylaws.
Yes.
Run it at home. Why pay rent?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And save on those heavy operational costs too.
When did you start your TikTok channel?
So 2020 came around.
2020. And what prompted that? Did you kind of outgrow other platforms, or you just saw the popularity of it?
My other platforms, I wasn't posting content. I was posting maybe pictures of dogs that I groomed, short little videos here and there, but it wasn't like consecutive content. In 2020, my business got shut down.
That's right.
I had 2 months off. So in having those 2 months off, I was bored. So that's why I downloaded TikTok. And I downloaded TikTok with the intent of just watching videos, not the intent of ever creating. Yeah. But then there was a huge problem. I was getting hundreds of text messages, emails, phone calls from clients panicking because their dogs need to be groomed and they don't know how to do it. How do you do this? How do you do that? What do I buy for this? What do I buy for that? Can you make a video and just show me how you do this? So I realized, okay, this is a big problem. And if it's a big problem for my clients, it's a big problem everywhere.
Absolutely.
Anyone that's closed around the world is a big issue. People don't know how to groom their own pets.
No.
And that's, again, in regards to dogs that have hair that grows, right? They get matted. They need maintenance.
Absolutely.
Not so much dogs that shed. You can just brush them. Away they go. So I thought, okay, I'll start making some educational videos on how to groom dogs for my clients. So I started sending them to clients, posting them on my Facebook page. And then I thought, well, I can reach a lot more people probably around the world using TikTok. If I can, let's just try. So my first video was actually me grooming my German Shepherd, and that went viral, and my TikTok just blew up from there.
Right from the first one.
Well, it wasn't from the first video. That was my first viral video.
Okay.
But I just started posting videos of dogs and dog grooming content, and that's when I started getting more views. And then when I actually posted a full grooming session, that's the video that took off.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, who knew, right?
Who knew?
That all it took was just a little bit of effort, learning a new platform, and then posting, and then exploding. And now, like where you're at right now, I know that you have a lot of followers. I don't want to share with the listeners how many followers you have across all platforms, but it's quite amazing.
Yes. So I actually just closed my business in January 1st.
Kind of retired?
Well, I switched careers.
There you go.
So instead of me grooming 15 to 17 dogs a day, I now groom 5 or 6 dogs a week. I film them, edit content, and then post them on different social media platforms. I earn revenue that way. So I realized that it could actually be a career. TikTok doesn't pay Canadians.
Oh, no?
No, they don't pay Canadians.
Wow. So you have to send them to your Instagram page then?
YouTube, basically.
YouTube.
Instagram doesn't really pay either. Instagram is more brand deals if people come to you for advertising. So I started making a YouTube channel because my uncle who has a YouTube channel said, "How many views are you getting?" I told him and he said, "Why are you not posting on YouTube?"
Yeah.
I'm like, people get paid on YouTube? I don't know. I didn't know that was a thing. He's like, "Yeah, you subscribe." I'm like, "Did you subscribe?" I didn't even know what that meant. I'm like, "There's a subscribe button." I've been on YouTube for years. I didn't know that was an actual thing.
Wow.
So he told me a little bit about it, and then I researched it, and that's how it started. My boyfriend and I are a team. So we do this together. So he films all the videos. I edit most of them. I've recently taught him to edit, so he started editing as well. And then we made an online store. So we now sell product. So things just keep expanding. New ideas come forward, and we can do more things with social media.
Yes, absolutely.
I try to be comical. I try to make my viewers laugh by roasting my clients. People found that to be funny and different from other pet grooming channels. But also having a huge passion for animals and being in the grooming industry, I've learned a lot about dogs and cats that I didn't know. And some of those things are knowing what breeds to get that match your lifestyle. Because a lot of people get a dog because they think, oh, like huskies are so beautiful, I want one. And then they get it and they realize how much work and everything that husky needs. And then that dog ends up in the pound. And so I wanted to try to educate people on, okay, what type of dog are you looking for? This breed of dog is great for this, this, and this, and this. So people can watch my content and be like, oh, I thought I wanted a husky, but I definitely don't want one anymore. I think I should get a golden retriever. To try and help eliminate the pet population from going up in shelters. That was one of my goals. And then educating people on food or vaccinations and that type of thing that a lot of people don't really know. They think the pet food industry, like dog food is great. And I wanted to teach people an alternative that is better to the pet food industry that can actually be beneficial to your dog's health. There's just a lot of things that I've learned that I like to put in my videos and teach people about that I think have reached a lot of people and have really changed a lot of people's lives or their pets' lives.
Yeah, and it sounds like now that you've established enough of like an information hub and you have people who are interested in this content, have you gone full time into creating content, or do you still do pet grooming?
I do pet grooming for content, but my job basically is full-time content creation. So I have to groom for videos in order to make content. But
And I mean, that's a huge step, right? Because
Yes.
you had something that's guaranteed income, right? You know, you had a returning customers every 6 to 8 weeks. You had new customers. You were able to specialize in grooming. So you made that jump to being more of an influencer and posted content. Was that something that, how did you feel knowing that you didn't have that steady income coming in? How did you handle that?
it was terrifying.
Yes.
To close the business. It was. And at first I taught a couple girls how to groom, and I had them run the business for me. And I realized that I'm a little bit too much of a control freak. And I had a hard time letting go and having people, make decisions or that kind of stuff on my behalf for my business. And I realized it just wasn't working out the way that I wanted it to. So I had to make the decision to close. And yeah, it was a scary decision to make. It was actually my boyfriend who had told me, that's it. You can't do it. He said to me, I don't know how you're doing all this. I don't know how you're grooming full time, filming videos on the weekends, editing content. You're insane.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was a lot of work, and I was definitely getting burnt out. So I think I just came to a point where I was so burnt out from doing everything. I had no choice. I had to pick one or the other.
And perfect. And then what safeguards did you have in place to ensure that you were going to be financially stable making that decision?
I had a lot of savings.
Okay.
So that was number one is, have a good savings account so if something happens, you have something to fall back on. I also had my significant other. So, he still was working at the time. He's not anymore. Now he's working full time for the business as well.
Wow.
But
So both of you now.
Both of us.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah. It's been a wild ride.
Yeah. And I think there's a misconception that, being an influencer is not as much work as running a business. Some would argue it's more. How was your experience with being an influencer and being a content creator?
Being a content creator and constantly coming up with ideas for videos is a lot more mentally, what's the word I'm looking for?
Exhausting?
Not exhausting, challenging. That's the right word, challenging. Because I'm constantly thinking, okay, I have a video coming up and this dog does absolutely nothing in the video. So it's not like I can make fun of the dog.
Yeah.
What the heck am I going to talk about? What am I going to do a voiceover on? So sometimes that got complicated, or it still gets complicated. And just grooming a dog, for example, can take anywhere from 1 to, let's say, 4 hours, depending on the dog. Then going through all of that content to make sure that you're picking the best parts of the content to put in the video, and then editing it all. It's very time consuming.
Process, eh?
And I went from being very physically active, working with dogs all day long, to sitting at a computer and editing all day long. And that in itself was also very challenging because I'm not used to sitting at a computer and staring at a screen. I get very antsy because I like to be up and moving.
Yes.
So that was difficult as well.
So now that you're a full-time content creator, you're still Niagara-based?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so what's that like? Are there any advantages to you to being in the Falls?
Being in the Falls is, when I started my business, just being a small community, word of mouth spreads really quickly, and you obviously everybody knows each other, right? So building my business that way was easy. But being in Niagara Falls, but particularly in Canada with the different climate, is essential for my business, because the dogs that I want to groom, a lot of them for content, for example, need to be big, fluffy, hairy dogs that have dramatic before and after. If I live somewhere that's warm, for example, there's not a lot of those dogs there to film, right?
That's true, yeah.
So you don't think about that, but it's true. Like here I have the wide variety of every different breed, where different parts of the world you don't really see all those breeds.
That's amazing. And I know that we're wrapping up on time here for the end of it. So one thing we like to do is, as we wrap up the show, is there any tips or tricks that you can give any entrepreneur starting out, or anybody that wants to get into the content creation, some mistakes that you made perhaps that you wish you didn't? So any tips and tricks, if you can do 5, that'd be great. But if you can't, just your top 3 to anybody you would like to say if they were starting up where you started.
The first thing I would say is, don't listen to anybody that tells you that you can't do something. That's the first thing. Like I said, my grandfather told me he didn't think I'd make it in this business, and now he's like, okay, you definitely made it in this business. So that's number 1, is don't listen to anybody telling you that you can't do something. Number 2 is just start. Just start, even if it comes to content creation. Just start filming. Just start throwing something on the internet. Who cares what it is? Just start. If you start, you'll always be able to get better. But it's the starting that I think a lot of people have a hard time with.
Perfect.
Depending on what your business is, invest in high quality equipment. When I first started grooming, everything was cheap. The lady that I worked for example, all of her tables were homemade. All of her, like, she would get a blow dryer from Shoppers Drug Mart to dry dogs, and those would break. And obviously they're not the most efficient for the job. So I learned when I started out, I was doing what she was doing. And then I started to get more educated on pet grooming just by, following Facebook pages. And I learned about all the different equipment that I really should be investing in, that took me from doing 5 dogs a day in an 8-hour day to doing 10 dogs a day in an 8-hour day.
Just on the equipment.
It's really important to invest in equipment. Doesn't matter how much it costs. You will make your money back and more on it. Invest. Another thing I would say is, don't be afraid, depending on if you're in the service industry, don't be afraid to charge what you're worth. For many years, I charged really cheap prices because I wanted to, beat the competition. And that actually wasn't beneficial for me, because my competition was grooming 5 dogs a day and making the same amount of money as I was making grooming 10 dogs a day. So I was actually killing myself physically to try to make the same amount of money. So really charge what you're worth, and don't be afraid to increase your prices, because if your quality reflects your prices, then clients will return. Don't be scared to make that change.
People who are even choosing the career of even pet grooming, like what kind of advice would you give? Like, what type of person would you say is fit for that?
Be aware going into this industry that it's very physically and mentally demanding. Be aware that you really need to be physically fit to be a pet groomer. It's a lot of moving around. You're going to hurt yourself. Don't be afraid to say no to people if you're working on an animal that you just feel is not comfortable for you or stressing you out. And every time you see that dog on the schedule, you're like, oh, I have to groom that dog again. If that's how you feel, just, tell the client that you're not the right fit. Just make that decision. And like I said, invest in really good equipment and, more education. Learn from other groomers. Don't think you know everything. I've been grooming for 12 years. There's so much more that I can learn about pet grooming that I don't know. You're never done learning. Always don't have that mindset that you're done, you know everything, because it's never true, no matter what you're doing.
Right, completely right. Can you even share with everybody your handles and how people can find you, even like your website where you sell your products or anything?
Yeah, so my website is girlwiththedogs.com. So I sell my own shampoo line and cologne, but I also sell a lot of other pet products and merchandise. And my handles are Girl with the Dogs for Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I think that's about it.
Okay, yeah, and we'll tag you, of course, with these videos, and of course, everyone, you can find these podcasts on, Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and our handle is Spark Innovation Canada.
And that wraps up another amazing episode of the Made in the Mist podcast. Thank you so much, Vanessa. It was a great opportunity to speak to you. And you were a first guest to actually go from entrepreneur to content creator and influencer. So we're so happy that you shared your insight and that you were able to tell our listeners, what they should be doing and what they should try to avoid in order to achieve the success that you did to date. So thank you so much. We look forward to following you, following your business, and just, interacting with you on a more consistent basis. So thanks so much, and we really appreciate it. And join us next time as we have another amazing episode of Made in the Mist podcast, which should be coming to you shortly. This one will be available shortly as well, too. So thank you to everybody, our listeners, our guest, and, of course, my co-host, Emma. That's all for now. Have a good one.